The great Peter King joining us here on the Mercedes-Benz Vans phone line as training camp season is open. He is one of the all-time greats, Pro Football Hall of Famer, and NBC sports compadre, Peter King, on the Rich Eisen Show. How you doing, PK?
Rich, I'm not so great today. I'm kind of an ignoramus.
Why?
After that thing.
No! You didn't notice Josh Allen. You got to work on your peripheral vision, basically, is what I'm saying, Peter.
Yeah, I really do. That was really one of the most bizarre things because at first,
yes.
when I finally did see his hand, and I shook it, he was like, it was, instead of being like, dude, you left me hanging, he thought it was the funniest thing in the world because he asked my camera person, Kelsey Bartles, he said, did you get that? Did you get that? He wanted to make sure that the embarrassment would be there for all to see. And it is.
Well, I mean, so you were just laser locked down the barrel of the camera and one of the most famous right hands in the NFL just hanging there.
Yeah.
I mean, and so here's what I will do, Peter. What we always do in the media is take something fun and try and read into it that's something serious for the season. I'm serious. It does appear that none of the expectations that are heaped upon the Bills and this kid has at all affected a single thing about him. It looks like that is how he showed up to camp.
I don't think so either. In fact, one of the things, I wrote a little bit about this in my column, is that, I was talking to Sean McDermott about Allen and also about some of the stuff that had happened in Buffalo this offseason, the Tops grocery store shooting and all that. And Sean McDermott just volunteered this. He said, it's like when David Ortiz took the microphone after the marathon bombing in Boston, and he said, "This is our bleeping city." And I mean, obviously, Josh Allen is not in Buffalo yet. What Ortiz became in Boston,
yes.
But his whole thing was athletes are really important in cities, and in this particular case. I don't know if you remember, Rich, because this was probably 2 months ago when Josh Allen went down to the site of that shooting, and how eloquent he was, sort of in his comforting words and all that stuff. That I think he started to become more than just the quarterback of the Buffalo Bills. He really became almost like a civic leader in many ways, and you talk to the people around the Bills, and his advancement in those kind of things, really has been impressive to the people who run that organization.
I just love the kid. I love him. I just think he is a face of the league now. Which, by the way, the Bills fans have been dying for a quarterback to be called as such for decades. Last year was not a fluke at all. It was a step forward, and now everybody believes the next step is winning it all.
Rich, I don't think any quarterback has ever played that I have covered. I don't think any quarterback has played a better game than the game he played against New England in the playoffs. And, I mean, there have been guys, I'm sure we could all figure out games where quarterbacks were unbelievable and perfect and all that stuff. But on that night, with the weather being absolutely horrendous, being 0 degrees, whatever it was, I don't know. But I don't know how you play a game any better, particularly against your arch rivals, in that weather than they did that night. Than he did that night. And then, hey, the next week in Kansas City, where he was fantastic in that game as well. Look, I don't know who I'm going to pick to be MVP this year. I think I know who I'm going to pick, but I don't. I will not be surprised if he goes on an incredible run right now. Because the other thing is, Rich, they really have a good supporting cast. They're better in the backfield now. Gabriel Davis is a legit 1B to Stephon Diggs 1A. They've got a really good tight end in Dawson Knox. I don't know. I think this team is really pretty good.
Peter King here on the Rich Eisen Show. So where are you heading next? Are you still in Western New York, or have you already moved on?
No, I came home. I came home to Brooklyn for 3 days.
Okay.
And then Thursday I'm going to Foxborough to see the Patriots, and then just continue on. I guess I might miss Joe Burrow, though, in a week.
Yeah, right. I know he's having his appendix removed, and but everybody expects him to be ready for the beginning of the season. Jerry Jones today, Peter, saying, giving a vote of confidence to Mike McCarthy, with McCarthy sitting there, and saying how McCarthy wouldn't be sitting where he was if he was not somebody who Jerry Jones believed to take his team to the Super Bowl and win it. And then he added at the end, and I have choices, is what he was pointing out. What to make of all this? Because Mike McCarthy's saying that this is a media-driven narrative, but I leave it to you.
Look, there's only one thing that matters in this particular story right now, and that is winning games. You know, if they go 7-10 this year, Mike McCarthy's getting fired. If they go 10-7 and win a playoff game, he's not. And so I don't know. Anytime Jerry Jones opens his mouth about Mike McCarthy and says anything, it's a story for 3 days. When in reality, the only thing that matters now and that will matter going into the future is how well the Cowboys play. I understand that everybody on God's green earth thinks that a year from now it'll be Sean Payton leading the Dallas Cowboys into Oxnard. And you know what? It might be. It's clear that Sean Payton very likely is, I shouldn't say very likely, but likely is getting back into coaching. And it's clear that the Cowboys love Sean Payton. But he's not firing Mike McCarthy if the Cowboys play well.
So there's that storyline. What do you make of the Kyler Murray contract clause requiring him to study independently?
You know, when Ian Rappaport wrote I guess it was Ian who broke that yesterday, right?
I think Florio was in on that as well.
Pardon me?
I think Florio was in on that as well.
Mike.
Sure.
Yeah, I was asleep when it happened, so
was Kyler.
I didn't know, but.
So was Kyler. I think he was listening to the meditation on his iPad as well. I don't know. That's what we do with our kids.
Yeah, I immediately thought that's not a small story. You know, that is not.
It's not.
That's not just.
It's not.
That's not just a little tweet, because what it said immediately to me is that, hey, we just want some assurance that you're going to work at this job. Can you imagine somebody ever approaching Tom Brady or Peyton Manning and saying, hey, we're putting in a homework clause in your contract? It is, I don't know what to say other than it says to me that this organization might be a little bit concerned about the kind of work Kyler Murray does away from the facility. And clearly they're going to deny that. But why then did you put it in the contract?
Yes, I mean, to put it in black and white like that in the language that also appears to be unenforceable. I mean, unless there's an actual babysitter.
No, there is a way to do it, Rich.
What, a monitor?
There is a way.
How do you do it?
There is a way.
What do you got?
Here's exactly what it is. Players take tablets home.
Yes.
Okay? These tablets, which used to be playbooks, 20 years ago, this would have been impossible to enforce.
Okay.
Okay? But today it's not impossible, because when you turn your tablet, your team-issued tablet on, there is a record of that. There basically is an e-record of that inside the server at the team's inside the team server. And so when that thing is turned on, the team can know that it's turned on.
Yeah, but by who, Peter? They can't tell by who. Or instead of watching the film on the Bears, if Kyler's not watching the Bear on streaming it at the same time, they can't tell that.
I don't know if Rich, I think they probably would be able to tell what he's watching on that. I think they can. I think there's enough of a digital fingerprint about what you're watching. And look, is it possible that he can hire John Doe? Here, I'll pay you $50 an hour to watch this tape on my tablet. Could he do that? I suppose he could. But the bottom line in this is this raised eyebrows when I read about it.
Well, because again, Peter, it's just here's the deal. Okay, the Cardinals are not going to walk away from Kyler Murray because they think he's not a hard worker when he's out of the building, because he's so generationally remarkable when he does play. And it's not as if he skips team meetings, right? I mean, he does do the work when it's required of him in the building. If they think the extra stuff is the difference between them winning and losing, and maybe that has been a cause for the last couple of years with the post-Thanksgiving Day swoon that appears to befall this team every year.
Right.
The question is, though, is how will Murray take this? He's got to be infuriated that this is the conversation today, and that we all feel that he needs to be babysat, and he doesn't have the same work ethic as, say, every single other quarterback in the NFL in his position, one would think.
Right.
So,
Rich, I understand. I think you're right about this, and I think it's notable. And it'll be interesting to see how all parties handle it from here on out.
Peter King here on the Rich Eisen Show. So I'll ask you this question that I asked Daniel Jeremiah earlier and Mark Schlereth yesterday. The team that intrigues you the most, 2022, entering the season, Peter King, is which?
Detroit Lions.
Okay. All right. You had me at Detroit. What do you have? What are you thinking?
Not that I think they're not beating the Packers, and I don't even know that they're going to finish ahead of the Vikings. I doubt they will. But I just like a lot of the things that I see happening in Detroit.
All right.
I think that Dan Campbell has a very, very good feel of the pulse of this team. I think that Aaron Glenn has been jonesing as the defensive coordinator for a playmaker up front, which they simply did not have. And I think now they think they might have one in Aiden Hutchinson. There's going to be a lot of pressure on him, obviously. And then I believe that the way I often look, Rich, for how a team played later in the year or late in the year when looking toward next season. And, Jared Goff was 3-1 down the stretch. This team was 3-3 down the stretch. And I think when I look at how a team plays when the games are absolutely meaningless, that is significant to me. These guys play really hard for this coach. And I like a lot of what I see. There was one thing, I was there in May, and it was the end of an OTA practice. And coming off the field, I was standing there talking to Brad Holmes, their general manager. And coming off the field, I bet there were 20 guys who came up and either fist bumped the general manager or hugged him and had a little 30-second little thing with him. And when he finished, I said, man, these guys not only like you, they looks like they really like being here. That you just kind of get the impression that things are changing there. And I think they got a decent chance to win 7 or 8 games.
How about that? Who's the next quarterback to sign? What do you think? Who is it? Is it Lamar? Does he actually sign? Training camp's open.
Isn't he really about the only one left? Obviously, Burrow and Herbert are going to sign this off season, you would think. But I don't know who's left.
I mean, it's entirely possible either one. Peter, it's entirely possible either one of them does sign before Lamar. I mean, Lamar could go into this year with no contract, and they'll have to franchise
Rick,
tag him.
Let me ask you a question. Sure. I want to ask you this question about Lamar.
Okay.
And it's that, I think the Ravens are sitting here right now thinking that, and again, I have no idea what they're thinking, but this is what I'd be thinking if I were them. We can either sign Lamar Jackson right now for somewhere in the vicinity of $47 million a year, something like that. Or we can wait, and if he has a Flacco-type year that he had a decade ago when he bet on himself, if he has a year like that, then we got to pay him $55 million. So maybe they say, we know we're going to sign him anyway, so maybe we ought to just bite the bullet and do it now. But there's one thing that makes me a little bit uneasy about Lamar. He's played 4 playoff games. He has not played well in a single one of them, I don't think. So that's 4 games. 1-3 record. I think he's averaged 13 points a game or something like that. And that makes me uneasy. You're not drafting or you're not paying Lamar Jackson, whatever they're going to pay him, $40 or $50 million a year, to beat the Browns in October. You're paying them to beat the Bills in January.
No doubt about that, Peter. And so my answer to that is, my kids go to a summer camp that has a very Baltimore, centric base within it. Okay, there's a ton of.
Yep.
They're all wearing 8 jerseys, man. I mean, and Lamar is the Ravens organization, and to their credit, they changed everything about what they do for him when they turned to him. And I know he hasn't played, as you say, well in a playoff game, but part of that may also be, where's the game breaker out wide, right? Like, let me see somebody of Jamar Chase's status drafted for him. Let's see one of those guys. Let's see somebody who's going to take the top of the defense off. They've got terrific tight ends and a terrific running game, but they really haven't had a game-changing receiver with him, and I know that might be sounding like making an excuse for Lamar, but let's see one of them. Let's get him one of those type guys who can change the game from outside the numbers.
I'm not arguing with you.
Before we make that decision on Lamar.
About that aspect. Now you don't have the ability to do that. You can't wait for it because they don't have one now.
Right.
The earliest they could have one is next off season, and you've got to do something with them before the 23 season. So, look, I just know this. I'd be a little bit uneasy paying him $1 jillion. I might have to, but I'd be a little bit uneasy paying him $1 jillion before I saw him play well in January.
Peter King, thanks for the time. Appreciate it. Let's talk before the season again. Always appreciate it, Peter.
Okay, Rich, all the best to you. Thank you.
At Peter_King, the great Peter King.